So I have a very exciting unboxing to do today, and that is this Creative Inspirations watercolor powder. This is a brand new product, I think, and I have thought about getting Brusho, and I think there's a couple other brands of pigment powder that is supposed to disperse like watercolors. And I never actually bought them or used them, but I've always kind of wanted to. But this is not as expensive. It is from the brand over at Jerry's Artarama, and you can also get it on Amazon. You can buy them singles or the set of 24 colors, which you can see here. I'll turn it around. I took the plastic off the box, but I have not used these, and each of the bottles is also wrapped in plastic. Now, one of the things that kind of blew me away is when I got this box, I expected it to be much smaller. This thing is substantial, and when you open it up, the powder bottles are just humongous. Like, this has so much pigment in it. I don't know if I'll even be able to use these all in my lifetime, but the colors look really cool. It looks very fine, almost like a flower consistency. And each one is also individually wrapped in plastic and kept in this pretty heavy cardboard box. So what I'm going to do is go off camera and unwrap all of these bottles and then come back, and we're going to test each of these colors to see how they look. And I am very excited to use these in future videos. So I will be back in just a second. Okay, so I have unwrapped all but one, and as you can tell, they are extremely richly colored. So just to give you a heads up, if you get these, and these are going to be so fun to play with. So the powder in here is very fine. What they have done with the packaging is they wrap the whole bottle in plastic, but then when you take off the black lid, there's another protect seal on here, which is awesome because it is a fine powder. So my first couple I just kind of popped open and a little bit of the powder kind of came up at me. So what I started to do is just give it a few finger taps to get any excess powder to kind of fall off that little protective cover and back into the bottle. I would not shake the bottle because it will kind of make it think of it like baking flour, how it just kind of goes up in the air. So now that I've tapped it, this comes off pretty easily, but you can see there's still a little bit of layer of pigment. These are going to be a lot of fun to play with, and I was going to go and wash my hands before coming back, but I just wanted to show you, like, I got just a little bit of powder here just in front of me while I've been opening this stuff, and you can see it's very potent stuff. So I'm very excited, and I now have all of these officially unboxed. I would say for storage, these are kind of like little spice shakers. You can see the one side is the bulk side. So if you flip this open, there's enough to get a good bit out. And then this side is a shaker side. So you can see the openings there. And what I would say, without having used these yet, but still seeing the powerful color, a little bit will go a very long way. And these bottles are really cool, but also since they're flip top lids, I would not store these in like just a box of a jumble of these, because you could still have one of the little lid sides flip open and lose a bunch of pigment or get it mixed in everything. I think what I'm going to do is actually keep them in this original shipping box and have them stored on a shelf so that they can stay flat and level and won't be knocked over. So I think this is going to be a perfect storage solution just as it is. So I'm going to go clean up, get some paper out to do some swatching, and then we'll continue. Okay, I'm back and ready to swatch. I've got my box of pigments back behind here, and I've got you zoomed in so we can see everything. I have pre-written all the colors on 4 sheets of watercolor paper, and what I did is I just wrote them down in order that they're packed so I can grab one at a time and do a test. So with these, They are dye-based, similar to liquid watercolors are also dye-based. They are slightly staining. However, I did get some on my shirt and it rinsed out, no problem. It's just sticking to my skin a little bit, but I think another hand washing or two should do it. So not too bad, but make sure to wipe down your surfaces if you're going to use these, and I wouldn't run a fan on your desk or something like that. They're things that seem obvious, I guess, but you might not think of them, kind of like I didn't think of it, and I ran a fan. So, and that was just during the unboxing and probably why I got extra messy. So, you know, Captain Obvious, but you never know. So I'm going to start off with this leaf green. I'm going to get a nice brush load of water here on the paper, and we're just going to do some light shaking because a little of this goes a long way. So I'm going to open up the shaker side and just put down a couple of little dabs of color, and you can see already how that is spreading out. Now you can also use a brush on this, and actually I'm going to give you even more of a close-up real quick. So you can see there's a little bit of powder kind of sitting on top of the page that's not wet. I could have probably used more water, but you can also use your brush and just dab some water in there and help it along. And you can see how well it spreads out. So for my next swatch, I'm going to be much more heavy with the water. So I'm going to rinse my brush here and get going on the next one, which is slate blue. Now, using this like this really isn't messy. I think a lot of it is going to be the unboxing that's kind of messy, and if you have a lot of air circulation in your art room, you might want to just be mindful of that. The way I'm using it, just kind of shaking out a little bit, no problem. Oh, well, maybe a little. So a little too much came out there, and well, too much is a relative term because it doesn't really need to be, but you can see how powerful and instant that color spread is. So I'm just going to grab a baby wipe because I got a little bit on my table, and I'm going to kind of wipe off some of that excess powder here too so that it doesn't interfere with my other swatch. So I'm just going to leave that be, and I'm going to grab the rose next. And since I used much more water, you can see the spread was also much wider, and it was just immediate. So I'm gonna try to find a happy medium here, but I'm really excited about these because they will make great backgrounds. You let that dry, especially if you're shaking it on a larger surface, you can probably get some really interesting effects. I'm just gonna go gentle here, just like that, and I'm going to help it along with a little bit more water dropped into it. So this is the rose, and you can see how nicely that spreads out. Now I'm going to take my baby wipe and just get a little bit off the edge of the paper here, because I just don't want it to flow out onto my table while I'm working. So you'll still be able to see plenty of that color. And keeping baby wipes handy is definitely a good thing. So on to the lemon yellow. I'm kind of excited to see what this one looks like on paper, because in here it almost reminds me a little bit of lemon or yellow ochre. And that's a little bit more of a muted yellow, but this will be kind of cool if it stays bright on the paper, kind of like this leaf green, which actually that's a good example because you can see how sort of muted it looks inside the canister, but on the paper it's just very, very bright and pretty. So I've got my water down. Let's get a little bit of this color out. I seem to have trouble finding a happy medium with the water, but this is a nice bright yellow. It's really perking up. And I'm not brushing it, I'm just dropping additional water onto that pigment because I don't think I have quite enough on my paper. It's going to be a little bit of a learning curve here. All right, next up is green gold. All right, let's get some sprinkled out. Oh, that's really pretty. Yeah, I like that. Then we have phthalo blue. I'm going to move my swatch sheet up a little bit and get some water on here. You could also dip your brush into the container and use these to actually paint with if you wanted to. I kind of like the randomness of the powder. Oh, look at that. How pretty. These blues seem to just really just spread out right away. That's pretty neat and good to know. But that's such a pretty color. It's so bright, and all these colors are just so bright. This green gold is fantastic. I love that almost two-tone look where it's kind of watered down. It's a brighter yellow, but then you get that really dark green in there. So I'm going to move this aside to dry and then go on to brilliant pink. Okay, let's get ready. I've got my paper wet. That's very pretty too. I love these colors. And I don't know if you can see it well enough in the camera, but that is a very nice pink. It almost has kind of a coral look to it when you're looking at that sort of secondary color spread. And this is just plain old yellow. That's what it says. I'm getting a little bit more confident with the shakers now, so I seem to be doing a little bit of a better job. I'm going to dab some more water in this one as well. Just make sure all of my pigment is wet down. And you can also kind of play around with them. Like I'm just sort of moving my brush, and I know this isn't really like a true swatch, but it's just kind of fun to play around and see what happens. Okay, next we've got burnt sienna. And that is this one. I think this one's going to be pretty. You can see the red color in it right in the canister. Something else that would probably work really well is if you, oh yeah, there was a little bit in the top. That's beautiful. Something else you could probably do is shake a little bit onto your paper and then spray it with some water. And you could probably get some really nice blooms that way. So next we've got deep turquoise. That's beautiful. Okay, for all my pronunciation friends out here, I'm going to say this is cerise. Please correct me if I am wrong. I'm going to have to look up that color and see what the origin of the word is. All right, getting this one nice and wet. That's a pretty pink, and I've got this color in my, I think it's the Mozart Kohlrabi palette, and it's pretty similar to that too. All right, now we've got Naples Yellow Reddish. Now, if you see a little bit of color coming up on this paper that's not in a square, it's probably because of the shaking. And that's part of the fun of these paints, honestly. They're hard to control, but they have some really beautiful effects here. Okay, I'm going to set this one aside next, and then we can go to our burnt umber, and we just made it to the halfway point with our swatches. That's really pretty. All right, next up, jade green. I'm just double checking my labels to make sure they were packed in the right order. Oh, that's nice. That kind of looks a little bit like the deep turquoise, but once everything dries, I'll be able to give you a close-up and show you. And if you see any little fugitive powder marks, like this little red piece here, it's probably from my unpacking, but that happening is pretty cool anyway, so I don't mind. Okay, next up is violet. Another really beautiful color, and it spreads quite a lot. Orange. That's definitely orange. I'm going to put a little bit more water on here with my brush just to make sure all that powder gets wet. And then we've got raw umber. These are just so bright and fun to look at. I'm going to have a lot of fun with these. All right, raw umber. Let's get a couple little, oh, there we go. That's another beautiful dark brown color. You can see it's a lot less red than the burnt umber. But still, I mean, look at all that color in there and the way it spreads. It's just fantastic. Phthalo turquoise. A little bit of pigment left over on this paper. So there's a slight tint to my water here, but it's actually kind of blue. So there's our turquoise. And there's some dry powder on here, so I'm just going to dab some of that from the little puddle I've got on the side of my page. My paper is kind of bowing a little bit, so I'm just going to blot a little bit of this back so it doesn't pool on the side of the paper. And I'm also going to wet some of this powder up here that's just sitting on the paper. That's pretty cool. Okay, let's set this one aside. And next up, we've got our last 6. We've got cobalt blue hue. And this looks very purple in the jar, but I can see that blue look. So I'm excited to see what we've got here. Oh, that's pretty purple. But I wonder how that will dry, or if it's very concentrated, because I can see blue in here. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's very violet, but I love that color. At least in my, maybe it's not. Like, I'm looking at my camera right now, and it's not as violet as it looks in person. That's interesting. Maybe it's my light's a little yellow in the room. Okay, red orange. That's also beautiful. That's a darker than the orange, but same kind of tone. So it does have a little bit of red in it. Next, we've got our charcoal. This is going to be, I think, a black and a gray. Well, really gray, but you can get it to be a black. And I've got a little bit of powder on here. I'm just going to dab a little bit of water on it to finish activating. And then next up is Hooker's green. And I'm going to get plenty of water on there and get this on here. That's really pretty too. Boy, I haven't seen a color here yet that I don't like. These are just so rich. They're so rich. They've dyed my fingers. Okay, King's Blue. That's a nice color too. It's like almost like a sky blue if you had it watered down quite a bit, but it's sort of like a blue violet if you have it very strong, like here in the center. But that's really a gorgeous color. Okay, last but not least, we have red. Such a simple color name. So let's see what we have here. That's red. We've got red, guys. We definitely have red. You get some water on here. I love how, like, when you dip the water on, it's like, it just sort of blows up. That's pretty cool. Now, when I would be using these regularly, I'd probably tape down my paper just so that I can keep it at least mostly flat, because it still will buckle a little bit. But I mean, I have tried all kinds of 140 pound papers anyway, and I've never had one that didn't somewhat buckle. But they're easy to flatten again, so I guess it's not too bad. I'm just going to get some of these puddles off the side. I guess I should have rinsed first on this one, But hey, we'll see a color mix, blue and orange. I did rinse for this one, but I just want to try to keep it from flowing right off the paper while it dries. But I'm going to set these aside to dry, and I will be back as soon as they are, and we'll take a good look at the finished dried color. All right, we've got all of our swatches dry, so I'm going to give you the close-up of each one. So some of the way this dries, where there's a little bit of a thick layer, it dries much darker, and it feels pretty solid actually once it dries. It definitely has a texture to it. You can kind of see that to the side if I tilt it to the camera, but it's really on here. It's kind of similar to if you were to put salt on damp watercolor to have that sort of blooming effect with the salt, but this is just with those pigment powders, and it's a really interesting look. But these colors are so vibrant, it's incredible. And you can paint with your brush, and you can see how you can get them to fully disperse into the water. A good example of that actually is this rose. So you can't see any hint of that powder in there. So there's a lot of different opportunities you could have with this, but these colors are gorgeous. And I think I've got a little bit of moisture on this one still. Some of the pools kind of stayed a little damp, but this one here is gorgeous. You can see kind of like a two-tone there. Same thing with this cobalt blue, and it reminds me a little bit of those White Nights granulating colors. Like, look at this burnt sienna, that is gorgeous. And also this raw umber, all those different colors in there. It's just beautiful. Now this is where I had gotten the orange when I was mopping up the extra water. And then this green gold is another favorite. So there's some really gorgeous colors in here. It dries pretty nicely on the paper. And I'm really excited to use these in some backgrounds or even as a finishing touch. And I can do some more experimenting. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to give these a try, they are like absurdly big shakers. They'll last forever, I think. But they will be a lot of fun to play with. So I'm really glad that I got to purchase this and then give it a try, because I've been wanting to try powdered watercolors for years. And I actually wanted to just try those brushos, but I just happened to see this when I was getting some paint refills that I needed, and I saw this pop up, and I think it just came out recently in June. So I was like, oh, I gotta pick this up. So hope you enjoyed this. Maybe give these a try a color or two. You can buy single colors. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And as always, thank you for watching. And until next time, keep creating.